you're not used to doing it. It's not a part of your life. It's not something that you're accustomed to, pushing yourself. There's been many days where I didn't want to work out. I just didn't feel like I had the energy, and I just forced myself. And I think there's very few people out there that know how to force themselves.
Hello humans, welcome to the M Word, the Manx Sports Podcast, brought to you by Martin. That is me.
I'm Matt.
That is him. How are you today, Matthew?
Pretty tired, to be honest. Just come off a decent Swift sesh, so...
Virtual world that you live in.
Hey, keeps me going over the winter.
Train a bit less.
We'll see when we hit the roads in the season.
Maybe. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our first episode. We got some great feedback, so thank you for that. First of all, we just want to say or shout out to our sponsor, billboards.im. They do exactly what it says on the tin, which is digital advertising. None of this plain, boring, fixed advertising. It's digital. You'll see them in town on the side of the sea terminal. So if you want to get your brand out there and make people aware of what you're doing, much like we are, they're the guys to go and see. So go visit billboards.im, the future of advertising on the Isle of Man. Thank you to them. We're joined today by our guest, who we'll come on to in a second, actually. Just to go back to the last bit of audio introduction there, and the voice, and normally Matthew doesn't know who these are, so don't know whether you recognise that voice that was in at the end of the intro there.
Yeah, I'm not doing good.
No.
No.
two for two. So that was Joe Rogan. For those that don't know Joe, he's got a podcast in the US. Matt, go and look it up. It's got a massive audience. He interviews many different people and from all different sectors of everything, basically. But he's very much about self-development, self-improvement, good habits, etc. And it's really quite relevant to our guest today, who's joined us for a chat, which is George Blackwell. Welcome, George.
Hello, how are we going?
Good.
Yep, good.
So to peel back the very small curtain that is in fact our studio, we recorded this episode with George a couple of weeks ago, and the audio wasn't the greatest. So George has kindly, because he's such a gentleman, come in again to chat to us. So again, I suppose a double thank you for spending a bit more time chatting to us.
No problem. It's nice to have a bit of a trial run, to be fair.
Yeah. So rather than giving a summary, George, it's probably easier just to talk through it. George's 22 now. When you listen to him, you might be shocked to hear that just from the way he talks and his just general view on life, which is really why ultimately we want to get him in to have a chat with him. So we're going to start right at the beginning, and we're going to go, are you a come over? Are you Manx, or Manx is the hills?
Just Manx.
Just Manx.
Yeah, just Manx. Parents aren't from the island. They moved over probably 24, 25 years ago, and yeah, they obviously had me when they were over here. So yeah, right. Just Manx, we'll say.
Yeah, so that, for those non-Manxies listening, that's always a reference. If you come to the Isle of Man, obviously Manx, I think your parents are born here. Manx is your grandparents, and if your Manx is the hills, your whole family was completely Manx. Yeah. So early days, early life. Where were you brought up on the island?
So brought up Port Erin, still live there. Back in the family home. Grew up very much out and about down south, as I say. Yeah. Russian primary school from sort of an early, from when you start school. So yeah, reception 4 or 5 years old, and then basically went through there until I was about 10, 11 years old, and then actually went to the Buchan School for a little while.
Okay. And how did you get into the world of sport?
Through that move to the Buchan School, essentially. Starting playing rugby, football. I'd always been introduced to football, but never really cared too much about that. Playing some other, pretty much. Started playing cricket at the Buchan, love that as well. Get into all sorts, swimming, cross country, the lot.
Is that one of the biggest sports at the Buchan then, rugby?
Yeah. Well, it was. You didn't really have a choice when it was Neil McGregor. Neil McGregor was head of PE, so it was sort of love it or hate PE, to be honest. Okay. I chose love it.
And those early days of that sport, that was just doing it for fun.
Yeah, entirely for fun.
Desire of doing much, just like most people at school. It's just part of the curriculum, and you're cracking on with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been sort of overly enthusiastic, to be honest, about most things. So that was, as soon as I was able to apply myself to something like that, it was sort of took over my life a bit. But that was sort of the case with anything that happened. If you told me to do something else, I probably would have applied myself in that same way, which is quite interesting. But yeah, that was what sort of took over from then on, from maybe 9, 10 years old through to, not that long ago really.
Yeah, right. And is that 9, 10, is that touch rugby or is it
Contact,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So it was straight in.
And that's still, they do that now, do they? Just
Yeah.
thinking about,
Yeah.
Yeah, it might seem a bit
Rather
Rather
bonkers.
than putting everyone in bubble wrap nowadays.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does seem bonkers, but yeah, still, I'm pretty sure it is anyway. At least 10, 11 years. Yeah, I think about 10, 11 years old, there's still contact.
And do you think, as you start playing, I suppose it's not that long ago back for you, but do you remember it being good at your school at that level of rugby?
Yeah, it was good.
Were you good?
First session, no. I remember rocking up. So I'd just joined the school, so obviously everything's a bit new anyway. And going to the first rugby session, I think it was pretty much the first day, and the first after school was the rugby club, so I went down. Obviously had a good, well, not so good session, because obviously it's new, it's part of the learning process, but ended up going home crying to mum at the age of 10, saying, oh no, it was rubbish, I was crap, like all the rest of it. And then coming in and chatting the next day with Neil McGregor, and he goes, what's he on about? He was great.
Right.
What's he so upset about? And I just had obviously no perspective on it, and yeah, from then on sort of loved it and stuck at it. And
then through your teens playing it more and more at school.
Yeah.
Were you playing then, starting to play for the Ireland at any stage, or a club, or was it just all school focused?
Pretty much all school focused. Club wise, there is a bit of club rugby, but on the island it's easier to get stuck into the school stuff because it's that environment you're around. Everyone's so much more contact time with coaches and so much more opportunity to train and do stuff. So from sort of early high school, so most of my rugby's always been through school, but obviously had a good stint with Douglas Rugby Club and with Nomads earlier on, when I was sort of like 12, 13, but yeah, shifted between a few clubs, just wherever would give me the most games sort of vibe.
Do have to ask though, was that from Buchan to King Bills?
That was what happened. So
Bit of rivalry of
I'm a bit of a school slut really. I've been literally gone so Russian primary school to the Buchan to King William's College to Castle Russian.
Made up for it then.
Yeah. And then Castle Russian across to Kirkham Grammar School. So yeah, I've been sort of all over the place.
So then, like in those, again, I don't know the rugby scene particularly, at 13, 14, are you playing with the age categories? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so you generally stick to school years. At King William's, when I was in year 7, so lower 4 there, I was trying to play a year up or even 2 years up at that stage, just because physically it suited me better because I was a bit of a big lad at that point.
Is that your choice or the?
That was me pushing for that at that age, which was good fun. But generally, you do tend to stick in your age category, yeah.
So then, at that age, are you starting to bulk out and mature? I guess earlier than other kids.
I was always tall.
Just smashing the protein.
No, at that stage, no. I was pretty lanky. Just sort of probably had one leg longer than the other. Couldn't
just run around in circles.
Not largely coordinated. Just very enthusiastic would probably be the way of putting it.
Right.
Yeah, not particularly skillful, but just loving every second, which was obviously the main thing.
Yeah, okay. How many times would you train a week?
7. I don't even know. Not nothing silly. I'd always be focused on sport, so it would mean you'd be playing rugby once, twice a week. King William's College are very good at getting kids active.
Right.
So they'll do PE. They have a structured PE lesson pretty much every day. So it'd be like cross country or swimming or something else if it wasn't rugby anyway.
Right, okay. And then you then start, or did opportunities then start arising that you were getting interest outside of just playing for the school?
Yeah, so this was actually through Southern Nomads, so obviously massively thankful for them for giving me that opportunity in the first place. Got sent over for a West Cheshire under-13s trial, which under-13 seems sickeningly young.
No, say Nomad doing that.
Yeah, so they sent me over for that with a couple of other young lads.
Travel on your own or someone go with you?
I think it was because there was a couple of trials. I think once it was my dad that took us, and once was another parent. So it'd be like 2 or 3 young lads with one of the parents. Essentially through that, got picked for West Cheshire, but got identified to get pushed through onto sort of a development pathway towards Sale Sharks Academy. That isn't the academy for Sale. It was more just like a pathway to kind of them to sort of get a few guys in the net that they thought they might want to be interested in, essentially.
What happens in those trials? Is it just rock up and you do matches, or they do like proper, equating to NFL tests of sprinting, timing each other, or like what? Or does it just have a bit of a play
It's out in 13s. They did some skill based stuff, so like looking at some one-on-one tackling and like some handling skills and stuff like that. But a lot of it was game based. In terms of getting nominated, there was a lot of kids there.
was gonna say, do you feel at that age were you just enjoying the experience of going there, or did you kind of have the actually let's?
I think I was enjoying the experience, but I was always very keen.
Yeah.
Like very keen to sort of show myself in the right light. I had a very good attitude. Had some good habits that probably not a lot of the other kids did have. That probably showed me to be better than I potentially was for a couple of years. But yeah.
Where did those good habits come from? Good parents.
Yeah, parents were huge in terms of picking up sort of selfless traits really from them. Hardworking, both very hardworking people, but in terms of selfless traits, they're massive really.
Did they play rugby? Or well, I suppose more so your father.
No, neither of them. Dad had no background. He sort of grew up playing tennis and playing a bit of football, but literally no experience in the family playing rugby like in the slightest.
And maybe those traits as well from the coach, I guess, at that age as well.
Yeah. So obviously at that age, it's been 12 or 13 years old. So Neil McGregor had probably been, as I sort of mentioned earlier, he's probably the most influential guy. Yeah. He's known by Matt as well. Here he's a bit of an icon really in terms of Manx sport anyway. So yeah, in terms of finding those, more just fine tuning. It sounds mad as like a 10, 11-year-old, but people are so influential at that age, and just sort of having that drummed into you, the core values of just like respect and discipline and the way you should speak to people and treat your teammates it's huge really.
That seems to be, again, obviously my build never played rugby, but it seems such a respectful sport as well in regard to just you see how they deal with referees compared to other sports.
Yeah,
that seems ingrained anyway at an early age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is. It's powerful. I hate it at the same time because you get rugby players love to put themselves, and rugby parents love putting themselves on this like moral high ground, and it irritates me so much.
Okay.
But at the same time, it is brilliant, and that's why the parents get behind the sport so much, because they can see these values coming through in the kids. But yeah, there's flaws to it, as there is any sport. But generally speaking, like you can't really fault it.
Okay. So you've been away, you've been for a couple of trials. What happens from there? Do they obviously interested in your skills and?
Yeah, so
bashing people around.
Yeah, so I get involved with this sort of, it was called School of Rugby at this time, so it's kind of like a feeder into the academy, where they'd maybe once every month, Sale would put on this assessment where they'd have a look at you, assess your skills and stuff, see how you're developing physically and all the rest, and if they wanted to put you into the academy, they would do. So I'd be travelling over sort of once a month from the island and going to this session, and just basically each time was like a trial, pretty much.
And were they narrowing down the numbers in theory then, or
no?
Some weeks people.
I was in a bit of a weird situation because generally you shouldn't sit in this tier. You'd always be moving up or moving out. But I was in this weird situation where they were never quite sure whether to take me or not.
Oh, right, okay.
So I kept going. It was also because I was on Ireland. They wanted to also have less contact with me, so they wanted to sort of keep me at an arm's length, but not bring me in too close at the same time.
Who was funding that? Schools, parents, or government, or anyone?
At that point, it was just my parents. So I was pretty fortunate just for them to be able to pay for me to get across. Really, like not many kids get the opportunity to do that.
Does Ironman sport help at that level?
So at the start, no. It was after sort of maybe half a year up to a year of doing that they got on board. At first it was just through some S&C support, so giving me that sort of education in the gym and whatever else, and then sort of following on, there was actually a change in criteria, I think, that actually led to me being sort of eligible as a sport aid athlete.
Right.
So then I think maybe just 14 or about to turn 14 was when I got onto sport aid, and that's when things started to sort of pick up really.
So then, I know you obviously moved away at that stage, or you looked to move away then. How did that come about? Is that that's a quite hard choice, I guess, to make at that age? And
yeah, it was a pretty difficult choice. I mean, I had a good year on Ireland, just trying to focus on doing everything I could to develop myself as a rugby player.
And you do stuff as well outside of rugby, as in gym work, things like that.
Ton of gym work,
totally focused
all sorts of different conditioning. I worked with a fellow called Trevor Christian from the age of like 13, 14, who was a pretty good S&C coach, and we worked pretty hard because it was the lack of game time was quite significant, but what it led me to do was really focus on the other stuff that would push me forward. So being as fit as I could be, getting ahead in terms of the gym and other things, even paying more attention to nutrition, sports psychology. Like I absolutely rinsed the sport aid services at the age of 14, like paid attention to details that you would often see some like really high level athletes just not be interested in. But it was because it was there. I took full advantage, and it put me in sort of good stead as I moved across.
So obviously that's fairly focused at the age of 14 and 15. And
Mm-hmm.
is the in the back of the mind here, I could use the word. Well, let's use the word career. Make a career of this. Could this be something?
That was the goal, and it wasn't the right goal to have, but it was the goal, because when you say it's almost the term "made it," like people has so and so made it. Like what even is a professional rugby player? Like, do you mean someone starting in the Premiership week in week out? Do you mean someone that's got a full-time contract and that's in the second team and not getting first team appearances? Is it someone in the Championship that's playing every week? Is it a National One team that is a full-time player that's playing with the rest of amateurs? Like, what does that even mean? But at that age, you just no understanding of it. It's just, I want to be a pro rugby player, and that's it. Like,
What did that? I was going to say all those options there, but what were you aiming for?
just the top, just like having that dream of, you know, playing international men's rugby and even like British and Irish lines. That kind of, you know, the sky's the limit was my mentality at like 14, 15.
Why do you think you mentioned at the start that you thought was wrong? Why do you think it's wrong?
Because there's no understanding, and like it's so, people always try to tell you at a young age, you know, professional sport, it's cutthroat environment, etc., etc. And it goes straight over your head, doesn't it? Like, you can't expect. But you can never. It's one of them that you can listen, but you never really know until you get put in that kind of environment what it's actually like. So yeah, not really sure how to expand on that anymore.
Yeah, okay. So then you move away. You look to move away. Talk to your family, I assume, about moving away.
Yeah. So we kind of got to this point where I've started my GCSEs. Just started my GCSEs at Castle Rushen High School, and a fellow called Phil Kringle, brilliant rugby player. He's playing full time for London Scottish. He's probably in his fifth season in the Championship now with them. He was just about to finish at school at Kirkham, having played for Scotland 18s and had just been given a contract with Edinburgh. Obviously, he was a Castle Rushen lad as well, so we had that sort of tie. And I think he pretty much chucked my name out there as someone that was interested to go. I think I had a couple of chats with him just from him being around on the island and being in the gym, in that same kind of environment. Really, really nice guy, and he basically put my name forward. At that point, it was coming up to Christmas, so it was like I either commit and move now and catch up GCSE work and stick it out, or I wait until A levels. So it was this kind of like make a decision now and go, or wait, and we just went, well, the right sort of things fell into place, and I was able to go in the end, which was pretty cool.
And why Kirkham? Is that one of the kind of feeder ones to the island, or is it the kind of prestigious one that you want to go to?
There's a couple. At that stage, it wasn't the feeder one, and sort of from me going and a couple of other guys going from the island, it's kind of become the feeder. Okay. At that point, Phil was pretty much the only person that had travelled to go to a different school that wasn't Sedbergh. You might have heard of Sedbergh School. It's quite a big posh rugby school up north. It's one of them. You think in your own little bubble, you think everyone would know, but they obviously wouldn't. So yeah, it was kind of just, it just seemed the best fit. It's quite a small school, so if I'd gone to a bigger school, I probably would have just got lost in just the mass of just people being similar. But I got looked after really well, because it was quite a small school, small boarding house, and all the rest of it, and sort of build those sort of trust and relationships. And that, I think that was what my parents thought, is that because it was quite small, quite personable, I'd get that extra sort of attention that I probably needed at that stage.
Where's Kirkham, having failed geography at school?
Not far from Preston. It's kind of in between the lovely Blackpool and Preston. So, yeah.
Isn't there sarcasm there, Mr. Blackwell?
Yeah, I mean, I lived there for 5 years. I'm allowed.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, so you move across full time. I presume it's study rugby, study gym, rugby, study, eat protein.
That's it. Just lost protein as well. Don't forget that extra protein. I mean, yeah, it was far too intense for what I should have been doing, but I was enjoying myself, so just sort of cracked on.
And in the team you were playing in there, again, were you obviously clearly not at your depth? Were you stand out one of the better guys in your own opinion, obviously?
I mean, I was actually lucky to be in quite a talented age group at that school, so there was lots of people who were all feeding into like county rugby. So sort of 15, I was one of the better players, but I was no means like miles ahead of anyone. Arguably, there was lots of other players better than me. It was just kind of everyone was kind of pushing on. However, they were all very relaxed about it and very much just seeing what came their way. But because I'd been in this position before where I'd not had the opportunities, or just to get an opportunity, I had to get on a flipping plane and travel and do all the rest of it. Like,
willing to go the extra mile.
Yeah, I just had this kind of different mindset to them.
So you'd be doing strength and conditioning work while they're all chatting and
hammering the gym,
yeah.
doing the extra running, doing the mobility, doing the extra skill stuff. Everyone else was pretty chill.
Right. And then opportunities came along to start then representing England.
Yeah, so when you hit the 16s, they've actually changed this now. So you can no longer play international 16s, which is a good decision from their part. But
how come?
It's just too young. Yeah. Just too young. Inflating egos that aren't needed.
Right.
We're back to the ego word. We'll touch on this again, I'm sure. Anyway, yeah, so 16s is the first age group you can actually represent internationally. So generally how that goes, or how it went at that age, was you play for your county, which for me was Lancashire. You then play other counties and then feed into a north side. If you play well in your county games, you get invited to a north trial, do the north trial, picked or not, and then you'd play like North, Midlands, South East, and London South East and South West, or something along those lines. I got up to the North trial and didn't get picked. It was actually at this stage, I wasn't actually in the academy at Sale, but I was, in sort of contest in position wise from like the guys like Tom and Ben Curry, who have just been, well, Tom has been representing England in the World Cup and has been absolutely phenomenal. And at that stage, you're comparing yourself to guys like that and just try and do everything you can to keep up with guys like that.
You obviously are, certainly at that age, a high level, if ultimately you're not getting blown away by guys who are now, at that very, very top level. Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't that talented. I was just really, really pushing it. A lot of other guys that were at that stage now, I've no idea where they're up to, but Tom's obviously, and a couple of other guys in that team that are at a really, really brilliant level now and really sort of have kicked on with their career, which is so good to see.
So when you're seeing those trials, are they regular ones? If you weren't picked then, is it okay, not picked now, I've got 6 months or a year to the next ones? Like, what? How does that work out?
So at that stage with North, it was pretty cut off. It's like you've not been picked, and then it's like from there it's kind of almost like see you later. So you can imagine they lose quite a lot of players, and it's a difficult decision for coaches and selectors to make at particularly at 16, who's going to be the best the best at 22, 23 is pretty difficult.
How was your mind having, I suppose, you might look at it as a failure, it's not, but that's the natural reaction, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I took it pretty hard, but it's quite easy because I went back to school in this supportive environment where I was being facilitated to work towards the next goal. So it was kind of, you could just put it aside and focus on the next thing, which would made it okay. Luckily for me, that was getting an opportunity with regards to Scotland. My grandparents, two of my grandparents are Scottish, so both my dad's parents are Scottish, which means essentially I'd qualify through something called the Scottish Exiles, so guys that aren't based in Scotland but can qualify to play. I did some sort of trials in a few different camps with them and then qualified to, essentially got picked to play for Scotland at 16s, which was pretty unexpected, sort of out of the blue. Like, if you'd asked me to have predicted that at like 14, 15, I'd have, clueless. It's quite embarrassing to say, really. I'd always been so English, like fully waving the flag, like so committed to it, all about like the red rose and the rest of it, and then an opportunity comes your way, and
that's interesting. On the other side, then, how do the fully Scottish people take that for the guys Scottish, the ones who are that, see guys using this XL cover? Was there any animosity, or was everyone just there to do well and represent?
No, it's interesting you say that, because I was quite worried at the time. I was like a 16-year-old being like, shit, like these guys, like, do they think I'm like a fake? And it's just like the question you'd ask, but they don't know that, so it's always just like you just got to roll with it. And it was actually the question I asked the head coach, because I got put in I was actually made vice captain of the whole squad with another fella who's proper Scottish as the hills. And I said to the head coach, and I was like, are you sure this is like the right thing to do? Because
do I need to wear a kilt or something?
That's what I mean. No, but it's literally to the point where it's like I'm having to learn the Scottish national anthem because I don't know it. And like 15, 16 years old, like who knows the Scottish national anthem? Like, could you sing it? Like, he was like, who could? Like, I wasn't Scottish at that point.
Manx one, to be honest.
Yeah, that's it. And he said, no, look, you're here because you qualify, and it becomes more than it sounds strange when you have like a squad that's living together and training together. It actually becomes about more than the country. It becomes more about the group of people. So it's kind of irrelevant, like the same way.
Much like a football team or whatever.
Yeah, it should be.
All over the world, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's how it should be. But yeah, I felt very sorry for him. The fellow that was captain, unfortunately, got injured, so it led to me captaining Scotland against England, and then facing up against Tom, who had been picked for North ahead of me, and lots of other brilliant players in that England 16s team that are doing really well now. But
how did that feel? One of those, I'm going to rock up and show why I shouldn't be in picked.
Yeah, it was proper one of them moments, but it just seemed like it was full circle. It was like it was just meant to happen, and in your head as a 16-year-old, you're like, wow, this is cool. Yeah, it's brilliant memory to look back on, really, to be honest. Yeah, I'm proud.
You captain that game.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on, did you play many times then for Scotland at that stage, or was it?
So we played. It was a bit of a festival at that point. So you'd have all the 16s from, also all the best 16s players from Wales, England, Scotland, and France were there as well. They all go to stay at this massive private school called Wellington College, and everyone would be staying in the house over like the 2-week period, and you'd play 3 or 4 games, like rotating around. Awesome experience, because obviously you're living with all the other lads that are there, and all the other teams are there, and everyone kind of gets to know each other a bit. So yeah, that was ace. And it kind of finished up with us playing England, and that was basically it from there. For 16s anyway.
Right. So then you're finishing your studies at this stage as well, I guess.
Yeah, so it was like coming off the back of that sort of high, playing Scotland 16s and captain all the rest of it, and then you're back to school and it's like, right, time to get ready for GCSEs. And it's like back to reality. You're really back to being like a normal, whatever that even means.
Yeah, and I suppose then looking at that age where you I think you mentioned earlier about ego. Is that something you were your kind of feathers fluffed up then, going, not who am I, but you know.
Yeah, it's that idea of at that
There's
age.
nothing wrong with that.
No, it's not. In hindsight, like I'd have enjoyed it a bit more because I felt great about myself because I was in the position I'd worked incredibly hard, put myself in this position and got some success. But kids are, I don't even call them kids, teenagers, and if I had a Scotland top on, going, oh, do you play for Scotland? Just that standard, or it's just like awful chat, but you that probably led to me not actually enjoying it as much as I should have done. And instead of just like brushing it off, being like, oh, I need to like put it to bed and ignore it and all the rest. But yeah,
maybe let it influence you a little bit.
Yeah.
So finish GCSEs. How were they?
Good, actually. Yeah,
it's good. Fairly academic.
Was brought up to think I was. I've always been academic, but it's, I don't know. Like I'd feel rude to say I'm not because I did well in exams, but my kind of perspective on intelligence is changed. To be honest, it's like seeing guys that'll do brilliantly well at exams, but are the most sort of emotionally thick people,
practically or whatever.
And it's just like if you define yourself by that, then you're pretty shallow, basically. Or if you define other people by that, you're pretty shallow. So I've tried to move away from that, but I was brought up being told I was academic anyway. Right. Is the way to put it.
Yeah. Okay. So then you're 16, 17, still very keen in rugby, GCSEs finished?
Yeah, so started A-levels, obviously at Kirkham still.
Okay.
Pretty...
Preston,
yeah, so still there, but that was sort of my first year where I had like some proper struggles. Obviously I had that setback with North, where I'd not been picked, but it was followed up pretty quickly with the sort of high of getting involved with that Scotland process and moving forward with that. So the first real setback was moving forward from that Scotland 16s experience to moving straight to 18s. So the problem was that my birthday's October, and 16s, the age range for 16s was off school year. So obviously as an October birthday being September to September, I was one of the older lads. Then suddenly it went to year of birth. So as I was then in with 97 birthdays, which meant, yeah, you're going for 30 years young.
Swine.
Yeah, I know, that's it. So I was essentially with a load of lads. I'd gone from being like top of my age group to bottom, and with people that were a school year or rugby season ahead of me.
Yeah, okay. Bigger, stronger.
Bigger, stronger, better. Just better.
Right.
And I couldn't keep up. And it was as simple as there was 2 Scotland 18s teams, like a first team that played in like the European Championship for 18s, and then a second team that they were just keeping tabs on for people just to whether they might want to move up or just people to keep a close eye on. And I didn't even make either squad.
So did that involve a lot of travelling then? If it's based in Kirkham, you're going up into Scotland to do all these trials still?
Yeah, so they kept it relatively low key, so because there was the Exiles program, they would look after me more so but it would still be travelling, so I'd still be going to like Sheffield from Preston, which was like 2-3 hour drive or 2 hours on the train, I'd say, stuff like that. And then a couple of camps up in Scotland where you'd be travelling up to Edinburgh to do like maybe a weekend or 2-3 days in a school week or something like that.
So how did you find that, doing all that, still constantly travelling, and your work and your rugby and your training and everything on top of that?
It was a
teenager.
A struggle. It's a struggle, but you just do it, and it's only kind of, it's one of them in hindsight when you're like, flipping heck, how did I do that? But you just, if you don't know anything else, you just crack on. It's just sort of a means to an end, I guess. But yeah, so obviously didn't get picked for 18s, and that was sort of a massive, like a huge kick in the balls, because you think you're great. You've been told by people you're great. Oh, just keep going.
Yeah.
So you've been told by people you're great, and then suddenly the same people that were telling you were great are now telling you you're not great. And this is a matter of like 3-4 months later.
Right.
And that for a 16-17 year old is pretty hard to take and pretty confusing, but I mean, it was a blessing really, because it brought me back down to earth, and I really started to, the best thing about it was it brought me out of the age group bubble, because it's so easy to get fixated on being good at your age group, and then you actually start to think, hang on, like there's people that have played this stuff, like this age grade rugby, international age grade, for the last 10-12 years, and they've all filtered up into like the adult game, and so you think, flipping heck, that's a lot of people, plus all the people that just didn't get picked that were itching to play, and you realise there's all these people still playing the sport, and how irrelevant those sort of international honours, as great as they are and as proud as I am to have been a part of that, like it's so irrelevant once you get up to the sort of men's game.
Just to go back to that, sorry, just to go back to the age thing, is that something that just changed at 16, or was there just changes in rugby at the time, or when you hit that age they just changed the criteria?
It was it was when England, for 16s, when it's England, Scotland and Wales, it's all the same school years.
Right.
When you go to 18s, there's like full international tournaments.
Right.
So, and that's when school years become less applicable, because it's all on different, I don't really understand it.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was full international, they basically wanted to make it clear, and I think it was like IRB rules, international federation.
Just different set of criteria.
Yeah, it was just, it generally just a bit of a balls up on their part. Okay. It shouldn't have changed like that, but it probably did me a favour anyway, to be honest.
So then are you starting to fall then, because you're struggling, you mentioned there about not getting picked, you then starting to, maybe not realising at the time, but not fall out of love, but starting to get...
to be honest, at this stage, I had a bit of a rough year in general.
Right.
That whole transition up to A levels, not having that sort of international prowess that I thought I'd had before. I'd not been picked for sale again, and that probably was sort of a bit of a sort of quaver where I wasn't quite sure what to do. But the year after was probably the most I enjoyed my rugby ever, because that was when I moved into upper six, and I'd really sort of kept working on myself physically, worked on the rest of my game to be a bit more all-rounded, and was captain of that first team. So,
and were guys around you doing? You mentioned earlier about doing all the strength and conditioning, everything, all the work around it. The guys then at that level doing that extra work as well. Yeah.
So as we got a bit older, the lads sort of picked up on it a bit more, which meant it wasn't just me being a lone soldier just cracking on, which was always nice. And that's when you sort of build some really good friendships and relationships with lads through that sort of period.
Do you ever find it a struggle to study and play the rugby?
I was alright generally. This is because I was still very, very one-track minded, so it was like, it was silly what I was doing. So I'd train, I'd train before school, so get in the gym before school, breakfast, straight to lessons, maybe do a full day at school, or even like a lunchtime session as well. After school, you're training from like 4 till 5:30. You get in, eat and shower, and then you're doing schoolwork for the evening until like 9. You might get an hour to chill out, and then it's like bed,
Go again.
repeat.
Yeah. That is intense at that age. Obviously,
Yeah.
you're driven and got a goal. It's
Yeah, you're just working towards your goal, but I mean, it wasn't sustainable because you're getting ill all the time. You're tired, you're grumpy, and it's like living in a house full of lads who are just going to wind each other up continually. Like, and there's no wonder like things would boil over and people would fall out and all the rest of that stuff. So, and then you chuck in like women and the rest of it as well. It's just a flipping it's just a nightmare. But
and you were in boarding houses at sort of 17, 18 still.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, it was great fun. Like I loved they're probably the best couple of years of my life so far. Just living with my best mates and playing rugby and enjoying everything to that extent was
You still got mates. I presume you still got mates from that.
Yeah, they're sort of my best mates. The ones I lived with at school for those couple of years. Obviously, most of them are based across. A couple of lads from the island did go, so they're living on Ireland at the moment. But majority of them are away, and like I'll make a big effort to get across and see them as much as I can. Really.
A-levels finish.
Yeah, A-levels finish. Another big year. So obviously captained that school team and worked pretty hard to get back in the Scotland setup and played Scotland 19s. Probably just managed to get in. So that was like, for me, was a huge mental milestone more than anything. Rather than it be like about a CV, it was about having not been picked to then work back and sort of catch up with these other lads, which was great. But again, it was then following that, going through another period of change. I actually stayed at school and worked as a teaching assistant, so basically helping out in the boarding house, helping out with PE, all kind of business like that, and that facilitated me to play at Fylde Rugby Club, which was about a 10-15 minute drive from Kirkham, but was a National 1 club at that point. So that was my sort of route from sort of school and then playing for Sale 18s and playing that Scotland stuff to try and then find a way to get a professional contract somewhere.
What level is that in rugby?
National 1, so that's third tier. So I think Premiership, Championship, and then National 1.
Okay. So you're immediately playing for, well, you haven't asked all the way along here, where'd you play in that thing, scrum thing?
So I played in the back row. I was sort of a general back row player, but typically 6 or 7.
Okay.
That's going straight in your head. I can see it. Matt kind of gets it, I can think.
So then you're playing regularly for Fyle?
No.
All right. So just training with them and trying to break into the team.
So yeah, essentially I'd done like a full pre-season with them, thought it'd gone pretty well. And I wouldn't say, probably maybe I did overrate myself, I'm not sure. Went into this environment quite confident in myself, seeing the sort of competition I had and valuing myself at least on par with them, if not higher, and really struggled with not being picked. All sorts going on at clubs, at the club, where there was like a player coach, and it felt like, in my mind, it felt like people were getting favoured, and generally the excuse was never on about my own ability and questioning my own.
In hindsight, would you say it not necessarily was, but there was perhaps a bit of both sides? Yeah, maybe there was a bit of favouritism, but maybe I should have just stayed focused on what I was doing. And
that's it. That's definitely it. And I was always busy. I was so busy comparing myself to others at that stage as well, which was probably was hugely significant. So, like I said about Tom, growing up playing with Tom, obviously I played against him with Scotland England 16s, but I went on to play with him at Sale for 18s. And other lads that I played with at Scotland were moving through the ranks really quickly. So, following on from school, like within a matter of months, they're getting debuts in like the Premiership and top tier. And like in my mind, I don't understand how rare that actually is. That they were like the 1% of the 1% that have kind of made this transition at a blink of an eye. But I'd set myself on their level, and in my mind I was on their level. So being stuck in the second team of a National 1 club, whereas people that are more interested in the pints after the game than they are in actually playing, and then seeing people that I know on a personal level making that step up to what I'd already dreamed of as being that Premiership level was like incredibly difficult to see.
That chipping away at the mind, is it?
Yeah, hugely, and that probably contributed to this sort of slightly negative attitude towards rugby and all the rest of it.
Okay. So then, how long were you doing with Fyle for?
So I did a season with Fylde. Right. Best of a season, maybe I think I went from September to about maybe April.
Right.
So it was almost a full season, but not quite. I then moved home, so spent maybe 3 or 4 months, if that, working on Ireland, and then made the move up to Glasgow.
Okay. What were you working on Ireland for? Just
did bar work, just something to keep me ticking over. Yeah.
How come you decided to move back home?
I think it was basically about saving up money. I also was pretty unhappy where I was. I found the transition from being a student to being, well, essentially a member of staff pretty hard. That kind of, socially, that was very, very difficult because these are lads that I'd been living with for maybe a year or so already that are now moved up to like the top of school, so they're in upper six. Like, they were like my good mates, and suddenly I'm being told I've got to separate myself from them and be a member of staff, which was like an incredibly difficult thing to handle.
Was that coming from, I mean, that makes sense naturally, I think, but was that coming from the school side saying you're not one of the lads basically anymore, you need to...
That was it, and that's probably not what I expected. And it was also just first job, like, it's always going to be difficult no matter where you go, but there was that on top of struggling socially, on top of rugby not going well, was sort of really starting to chip away at me.
How did the opportunity in Glasgow come about?
I applied to uni, so it was basically a university place at Uni of Glasgow to do psychology. Came up, so I moved. Well, uni wasn't supposed to start till mid-September, but I went up there at the start of June to start pre-season at a new club, Glasgow Hawks, which was great. That sort of reinvigorated my my sort of love for the sport, because it was quite nice for getting a clean slate. Because going to Fylde, it was very much loads of the players had like used to go to Kirkham, and it's quite a small bubble, so everyone sort of knew each other, and it was quite nice to go somewhere entirely separate, start from scratch, and just rebuild. That's what I did.
What
there.
level are they, Glasgow Hawks?
Pretty similar to Fylde, so top amateur tier in Scotland. So it's a bit different the way it works in Scotland, because there's pro teams, and then there's a cut off because they don't kind of fluctuate. It's not like a fully flowing league system. So the top amateur tier was the league that Glasgow Hawks were in.
So you're with them from June before the school year.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-season go okay?
Pre-season went really well.
In the first team?
Yeah, so at the start of the year, or through the pre-season games, I'd started every fixture, worked really hard, built up like a good relationship with the coaches, with the rest of the lads. First couple of league games I'd started, and then got a bit of an injury which really threw me.
Right. What happened there?
So I got the initial injury was a dead leg, which doesn't sound largely impressive, but it was actually a week or so after this dead leg, when it had settled down. I was doing some foam rolling and basically burst a blood vessel in my quad, which the technical term for that is a hematoma. For like, really think of it in like the most simple way possible. You got your fascial sheath.
This is the simple way.
Yeah, I'm telling you now. Yeah. It goes around your muscle, and essentially, if you bleed enough inside that, blood can't escape. So imagine just like a muscle just soaked in blood. Right. Looks like your leg's like a balloon, hugely swollen. Looks like if you poked it with a pin, it would just pop. And there's no way of draining that blood. So you basically just got to sit with your leg like a brick and wait for this blood to sort of drain away, essentially.
And that during your season, so that's you sidelined?
That's me sidelined for the whole year, knowing that I'm going to be sidelined for the whole year. I'm also on crutches, in quite a lot of pain, and this is timed in with when uni starts. So it's like the start of freshers, when I'm supposedly needing to be out and about, meeting people, like getting settled for the year, and I was pretty much immobile, which was difficult to say the least.
To make friends.
Yeah, it was that. I'd also, rightly or wrongly, was living with 2 full-time rugby players rather than doing the typical thing and like going into student halls. So
watching them go every day practicing and doing the schedule you kind of want to be doing,
that kind of vibe. They obviously I was a student, and they were full-time, so they're being paid anyway, but they were on like a different time zone to me. Like, they'd be up and out and at the club from like 7 a.m. if not earlier, and I wouldn't even need to be in uni till 10, 11 o'clock. So imagine I wake up, no one in the house, might get up, get out to uni, full day, like, could be on my own. I don't get me wrong, like, I'd made some friends, but it's all that weird transition period where like you're not really sure who's who and who you want to spend time with and the rest of it. And you could get home, and I could get home at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. They might be in bed already, or I might see them for half an hour, 40 minutes, then I might be off trying to see people, and then that's it. So it felt like I was literally near enough on my own majority of the time.
So you're injured for the season. Are you aware of that injury? Like not quite day one, but pretty early doors. This is going to be for the season.
Yeah, they were like pretty clear.
Right.
I'd had scans and stuff, and they were like, look, like
this is the outcome of what happens.
this is just like sorry.
What's your immediate reaction to that in your mind?
Not really understand the significance. It was my first serious injury that I'd had, so hadn't really had that experience in managing something like that yet, so it was quite difficult.
Is the early reaction? So speaking to you now, maybe, but is that initial reaction right? I just need to work through this, or is it not getting depressed about it, but let it batter your head for maybe longer than it should? Or you're positive as in I just need to start doing other stuff around this, and
I was pretty busy with physio and stuff. Like they were pretty good at like having acupuncture and just generally checking up on me all the time. So I was doing physio 2-3 times a week and trying to be active, but it was just a bit of a struggle really, because it's literally one of them where it's not, you can't work through it. It's like sit and wait. Because you're on crutches, you can't. Your mobility is like insanely pretty much zero.
They're almost worse injuries, aren't they? When if you can do work around it and do work to improve the injury, it helps the mindset. But when it's
exactly,
I suppose like maybe a bone breaks, there's not a lot you can do. It's just time, principally, and if you can't contribute towards a healing, imagine it.
Yeah, I couldn't do much else, but I was probably trying to deal with that frustration in probably the wrong way.
Right.
I remember going to, I didn't typically play, I wasn't planning on playing uni rugby at all, but it was just like a good social circle to get in with, just to make some friends, so obviously wanted to make an effort to go to rugby initiations. I'm going to rugby initiations like in a dress on crutches, and I'm sat on this like club floor with all these other freshers, like with my crutches, just thinking like, what am I doing here? Like staring at my leg.
At the time?
Yeah, like looking at my leg, being like, this is just. I was well aware that there was going to be no good outcome for the injury and for me personally from doing that, but you're just itching to like get like interaction, to get to know people, and like everyone at that stage, you're not quite sure of yourself. You're not quite sure who you are, what you want to do, all the other things that are going on. So that was just another thing to deal with on top of that, really.
And did that continue just to spiral go in the wrong direction?
Yeah, it carried on eating away at me. I thought I'd got quite settled. So this is what really rocks me was I'd made through sort of the first couple of weeks through freshers. I thought I made like quite a good group of mates, and there was a couple of social incidences that I couldn't even tell you what had happened, but I ended up being isolated from this group of mates I'd made, and this was timed in with that injury, so that essentially I didn't have anyone. I felt like literally just like a lone soldier, living by myself, being independent, trying to go to lectures, not knowing anyone, and it was a pretty low, to be honest.
And rugby in general, are you still thinking? Is there still that mindset of I can make a career of this, or is that kind of drifting out your line?
I think it's still in the back of my mind, but it was like I'd really struggled to enjoy it when I was at Fylde, and it had almost been like, right, let's give this one more go. Let's go up to Scotland. Let's really commit to this, and have a crack. And then it was sort of building myself back up to then have that huge setback. Would pretty much it really wiped me out.
Yeah, because it's tough
to be honest.
Because your uni, I think got time frame 3-4 years, so being told you have a minimum like a year of that gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 30%. Just yeah.
And it's the reality is it's not that. It shouldn't be that significant, but I was just in probably I probably was in quite a fragile position anyway. I probably wasn't actually that confident and have that much self-worth that wasn't just attributed to me through the success I'd had in rugby. Like that was sort of what was holding up my own self-esteem. And when you strip that away, I was sort of just didn't really have anything there and didn't really value myself and didn't really understand how to sustain myself day to day without having that to sort of lift me up.
Right. So it's that year then went on. What's going on? It spiraled down pretty quick, to be honest. Like I managed to, it sounds weird. I hit rock bottom very quickly, so I came back up in the end. Yeah.
It was just more bad habits. So what's the best way to describe it? It would be, I'm continually looking for ways to justify my self-worth to myself and to other people. So at uni, there's all sorts of ways you can do that. It would just be, being boisterous. It's almost the definition of just toxic masculinity, really. Being boisterous, drinking a lot, bad habits with women, like all that sort of thing. That's just not being the sort of person that I'd been brought up and to be, essentially. Like all these, like, you talk about all the habits you have from good mentors like Neil and your parents and the rest of it, and you just like fall away from it completely. And in the short term, it makes you feel better for like on a night out, and then in even a matter of days after, you just feel even worse about yourself because you're acting in a way that's really not you.
And you're aware of that, even like again, I can imagine me being aware of that at 19, thinking, yeah, I got a hangover and I don't feel great, but I don't really self-judge myself 3 days later.
Yeah, there was probably a little bit of awareness, but not enough to
do anything about it.
Yeah, that's it. And the way I sort of, in hindsight, the way I'd describe it is, you're just so lonely all the time, because no matter, even if you get in that social interaction with people, if you're not being yourself, it's like this, the real George isn't speaking. I don't know how the best way to describe it. I don't know if that even makes sense.
Completely makes
sense.
Yeah,
if I'm not being myself, I'm entirely isolated all the time. This is this like fake persona of myself that might be having a great time, that seem really confident, that might seem like he's got everything together, but actually inside there's just someone that's just like sort of crumbling and falling apart, really, and not knowing who he is, where he's going, or have any sort of self-worth or self-confidence.
Did you at any point in this speak to family or your friends down Kirkham, something to try and get your mindset a bit right, try and get yourself out of that?
Yeah, so I probably did speak to them, but it's that classic thing of not really, if you don't really understand what's going on, it's quite hard to communicate that. Like, I'd felt pretty low for quite a while. I probably not undervalued. I've probably not explained that well how low I actually was when I left Kirkham in that role and moved home. Like, I was at a real low point then. I communicated to a few people then about that, but then I sort of brushed it off. And this is where the whole mental health thing comes in. And I'd never ever diagnosed myself with anything. I never went to see a doctor. I never went to see anyone. But it's just knowing that you're feeling like awfully low, like a horrible low, isolating feeling, but not being able to communicate, but not really understanding why or what's going on. And there's mental illness and there's mental health. Like, everyone's got mental health, like we all have physical health. Not everyone's got an illness. I adjusted my circumstance and my perspective on things and made myself feel a lot better. It's like the position I'm in now, but at that point I didn't have that understanding to really.
I was going to say, so you using it with what caused you or helped you bounce back up when you hit that? Yeah,
so I had like a real low point. I think it was an incident on a night out. I was really quite drunk, if I'm honest. But there was a big sort of fallout on a night out, and I went walking off on my own in the middle of Glasgow. And this is just aimless walking, like literally just me by myself. But I ended up at this motorway bridge, and it's not like at the time I really scared myself, but I'm now, like, in the next sort of year or two, becoming more acquainted with how suicide happens on a detailed basis. It generally doesn't happen on a one-off thing like that. There will be a lot of planning going into it. But just to put myself in that position where I'm sat or stood looking over a motorway bridge, absolutely hammered, thinking like, I have no value on myself. What is the point in all this? I think I got a text from a friend that I've been trying to ring earlier, and it like snapped me out of it. But then that like really frightened me, and I thought, like, I don't know what's going on here, but I need to make some sort of change, whether it's my environment, whether it's me personally, like, and how I didn't really understand what was going on, but I just knew something needed to change, and that's sort of where I sort of went from there.
This is why I love the story, your story in general, not that part of the story. But
yeah.
Again, at that age, maybe it's my poor memory, but I couldn't even have enough self-awareness, I don't think, that age to see those things. And I just think that's what's really fascinating about that's the situation and what you went through, to be aware enough to go, and I need to do something different. I need to change the projection of where I'm going here, which I think you then looked at coming back to that moment, going, I need to get out of this environment. I probably just think about that more in the last 5 years. I'm in the 40s now, where back then it's not something that. So
yeah, I mean, the environment I was in, like, don't get me wrong, every other student goes through that and comes out the other end fine. Like, what I went through isn't something that's particularly bad. All I had was, a few setbacks in a sport that I'd previously loved. But it was just, to me, it's in hindsight, it's seeing that if you don't have a support network, how these things that shouldn't be that significant can really take like a significant effect on you. Having been taken out in that environment at Kirkham, where I had my best mates around me all the time, having not been that connected with my family up in Glasgow and all the rest of it, like if you're isolated and you're going through something on your own and you don't have people to talk to about it, like anyone can end up like that, and that was like the most significant learning for me, really.
So what did you do then to change your environment?
I started looking at options to get home. Essentially, I'd started communicating.
So pretty much get out of the city, get out of
not far off. Yeah, it was sort of thinking that this isn't right. I think well, I did. I blamed it on uni. I said, this isn't right for me. Like, it's the drinking culture. It's going out all the time. This is taking a toll on me. What we'll come to in a little bit is just from having those change of environments and continually to change my environment. I got to a point where I was like, hang on, like this isn't me. It isn't my environment that's the issue. It's actually like my own shadow, and took me time to sort of realise that and to address that. But at that point, it was just like, get out of the city. Let's try and move home.
What about the rugby side to that conversation of, okay, there is a time limit on how long my leg's going to be out. Should I stick it out, or was it
It was at this point.
Don't think about sport. It's
at this point. It was just kind of like rugby was out of the window. Don't get me wrong. It was what I did. It was who I was. So it was always like on my mind. But that's just more of an identity thing rather than like less of a career thing. I think it just kind of, through that point, it just kind of like completely dissipated, to be honest. Any sort of motivation and drive for that had just gone out the window.
And how did you get home? As in, appreciate you might have got
So obviously I come home for Christmas, but through the support I'd had through Ironman Sport, I knew Roger Blackwell, and I essentially dropped him an email looking for some kind of work or apprenticeship that would fit with actually studying part-time, where I could come back to the island, maybe do an open uni degree and work at the same time, something that would complement each other. I came and had a good chat with him, and they were able to sort me out with a job. And if that opportunity hadn't come up, it's hard to say where
you'd be now.
Yeah, like it's like quite a scary thought. So yeah, sort of forever in debt for that chance, really.
It's funny then, I suppose. Well, not funny, but then tying that back, I suppose, similar to Neil, and that people that maybe at the time when they're helping, and because of maybe their job or just out of their good nature, that how it changes the direction of people's lives without them probably even realising it.
Yeah.
Which again, I think is just really fascinating when you talk to people and look back and probably acknowledge that people change, and change people's lives. So it's similar to the podcast we had a few days ago. You change lives and maybe not even realise it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's crazy.
So you come back, live with go back to your parents.
Yeah,
assume?
Moving home. This is the first time in like 5.5 years I've lived at home. So it was obviously a bit tough at first, but settled in.
Did they have any idea of what prompted you to come back now?
No idea. They knew. Don't get me wrong. They knew I'd had a bit of a shit time and knew I was feeling pretty rough, but they probably just thought it was more around being injured, and they probably didn't really know. It's hard for them. It's hard for you guys to see that because I'm just sat here talking about it all now. Probably don't show as much as I'd give off here as to what was, so they probably weren't really that clued up on what was happening.
Again, you're 19, ultimately still 18, you're still young. Communicating with the parents at that age,
it's just a bit. It's
not
limited. It's just limited. To be fair,
a few grunts and out the door. So you come back. Do you stop playing rugby on the island, or you're kind of sick of that sport now?
Yeah. So when I'm not fit. I'm still not fit at this point, so I'm still able to play even though I've moved back. So it's only early January, but by sort of February, mid-Feb, I'd get involved with Douglas. And this is like, I'm not really interested in playing. It's more just, I'm George. I play rugby. So what I'm going to do when I move home? All right, I'm just going to play rugby. Got involved. I wasn't enjoying it at all. It was training Tuesday, Thursday, playing on a Saturday, and what I'd live and breathe for beforehand was now just like sucking the energy out of me. Like I just wouldn't want to be there, but I didn't have anything else to do. So I was
gonna say, how long did you stick with that?
I stuck it out for the rest of the season, but just progressively enjoyed it less and less and less and less.
Do you think it's at that age then? When do you think, just listening to you, when you identify so strongly with I suppose, a sport or a thing, do you think that can be toxic then? That you talked about I'm George, my identity is rugby. Do you think that's a, I don't mean you personally, generally a problem where people are just, this is my identity. I'm, I do a lot of bike riding, so this is my bike riding. Do you think that then there's a danger there that this is all I am and all I...
Yeah, I think it can be negative, but it's just about people being well-rounded. So, for me, like, although, like, say, I tried out at school, like, my whole social circle and my whole life have been focused around this, and it's brilliant for people to have that, because it can give you some purpose and gives you that sense of community, but you need something else as well. And it's not to say that it's in case rugby disappears, you need something else to hold your self-esteem up. It's just that who you are as a person is bigger than your hobby, essentially, yeah.
So, the end of the rugby season, you play sort of locally, you're saying you're kind of getting peed off with the sport.
So really not enjoying it. I had a good conversation with a good friend of mine, Chris Brannigan, who's actually the rugby development officer for the Ironman, and obviously I've known him for a couple of years because he was keeping track of my progress going from club to club and was well aware of like what I was going on with at school, and we had a long chat, and he was like, look, like, it doesn't matter if you're George the rugby player to so many people over here, if you're not enjoying this, you don't need to do it. At this point I was already involved with coaching quite closely.
So when you mentioned that, George Rugby, did you think everyone was looking at you thinking that's George the rugby player?
Oh yeah, and that's probably what contributed to me not enjoying playing like Douglas as much, because you've got this, it feels like you've just got this asterisk next to your name as Scotland international player that's moved home, and it doesn't really mean anything.
Do you think you're a failure?
Yeah, that's it. To move home, although there were bigger things going on, to have moved home was like admitting defeat in this quest, this big goal that I'd had of becoming this professional rugby player, and to come home
9 years of your life, 8 years of your life,
just fully commit to that was basically just me saying like, I'll give up on that. And even to think about giving up, like, I'd brought myself up with this mindset of just work through setbacks, work through failure, failure's just a route to success, just keep going, keep plugging away, and to actually just sit there and be like, I failed at this, was like incredibly difficult. People probably didn't understand how significant that was to me, really.
A couple of years on, do you realise that you didn't fail? Do you still think you did?
I'm really proud of what I've done. In the back of my mind, I think if I went back and I'm not saying I'd be a pro player, but if I wanted to go back and play in like a good league, I'd be 100% capable of doing so. I just don't really fancy it, to be honest. No. But it's having that confidence in myself, and also being freaking proud, because I got like, even at Fylde, I got like 5 or 6 appearances in National 1 at 18.
Yeah.
And that's really, really significant. But because I'm comparing myself to lads that are playing Premiership, I just didn't value what I was doing. So it's all that perspective of just staying in the present moment and focusing on yourself and appreciating what you've got and focusing on your own journey rather than worrying about
noise around you.
Yeah.
Sam talked about, when we chat to Sam, about kind of this circle and what's in your control in that circle and what's not in your control, and try and ignore, I suppose, other competitors are outside that circle. You can't control them, so just focus on what you're doing. And I guess that's a lot. You see that a lot more mentality in sport. Yeah,
that's sort of what I've felt towards, but it's also what's contributed to me having such a positive relationship with everything I'm doing now.
Yeah, right.
Even in my career and with Ironman, it's like I needed rugby. And I needed rugby to hold up my self-esteem and to hold up my self-confidence, and without that I really struggled. And the beauty of it all now is like I'm very, very happy with who George is, and that's withstanding of anything that goes on. But I want to do well at Ironman, I want to do well in my career, and it's not like I need that. That's not what's holding me up, but I'm still pursuing it. I'm still just as motivated, and that's the sort of beauty of what I'm doing now, is it's sustainable, like hopefully through whatever life sort of throws at me.
So the Ironman then,
just go back to that,
like you look at rugby as it's your one crutch, isn't it? When the crutch is gone, you fall over. Where now you've got an Ironman crutch, but you've also maybe got a family crutch. You've got maybe a slightly different mentality crutch as well. So you've got other things when one thing stops or doesn't work. So how did you get into Ironman?
So, so I'd obviously had this pretty strange adverse experience in Glasgow that I probably hadn't quite come to terms with. I probably just moved home and tried to just forget about it and didn't really see any significance in it at that point. But there was another event with family that was very similar to my own experience, And it was just sort of that really rattled me, that two of us that were very close could be feeling in such a way and have not communicated to each other at all. And that sort of stemmed me, well, that sort of started the fire of becoming educated on all this stuff, broadening my understanding of what mental health actually is, all these different...
It's like you going online to speaking to people,
that kind of thing. More so online at this stage rather than actually actively having conversations. Where these conversations really began was after I started fundraising. So, in a selfish way, like I'd finished playing rugby. I wanted some kind of goal. I'd always had this idea of doing an Ironman at some point in life, and it's just like, well, if I'm not playing rugby, like why not? Like, got nothing else to do with my time.
Yeah.
Got nothing else to do with my time. I love training. I love exercise. I love that whole aspect of life. So, right, let's give this a go. But this obviously timed in with this event, or these two events with family, which sort of led to me looking at charities to do with suicide, and that brought me to Calm, who essentially are targeted at men's particularly, but the whole messaging obviously is applicable to everyone. It's basically suicidal prevention awareness charity.
Are they UK based?
Yeah, UK based, but majority of what they do is kind of online stuff, online campaigns, all sorts of different things, and they really resonated with me with their messaging. How they run the charity was brilliant. So basically got stuck into campaigning for them. They kind of started with wanting to do an event that was tied to statistics of suicide, which was, the first was a swim. So it was a 6,639 metre open water swim from Castdown Harbour to Guernsey Pottery, so far side of Guernsey, in sort of representation of the 6,639 annual suicides.
How do you find that as someone, I'm making assumptions, that's not done a lot of open water swimming before then?
No, I mean, like, that's the thing. I think me and Martin chatted about this a while ago. Is like I was lucky enough to be brought up in Port Erin, where, you know, you're in the sea, you go and jump in, you're doing like kayaking and the rest of it, so you're quite comfortable in the sea. But I was by no means like an open water swimmer. I swam a little bit when I was younger, but I probably should have put more thought into this challenge. I was just like, right, let's do this. Say I'm going to do it, commit to it fully. And I was like, right, logistics. How are we going to do this? In the end, I was thankfully there was a fellow called Guy Wood, who one of the lads that plays rugby down at Douglas. He had a sort of rig, so I was able to get the boat out and support me all the way around, which made things a little bit safer, to be fair. Didn't touch the boat the whole way around though. That was part of the deal. So obviously did that swim and raised best of like $6,000 doing that, which was, at this stage, it was starting to elevate that self-worth that I needed aside from rugby. But I was kind of coming to terms more with just the values of myself and getting back to like what George was before all that sort of happened. Then from that, did another fundraising challenge, which was again with the statistics of suicides. So it was 84 weekly and 12 daily male suicides. So I did 84 miles on a static bike on a turbo for 12 days straight, and went around different locations, basically in the Isle of Man, and parked up and had banners for the charity and was just discussing with people and having these conversations around the statistics and promoting the charity. And yeah, basically by the end of that, we were up to about £12,000-13,000, which was pretty cool. Like, it was an awesome experience, really.
Yeah. So how did you find that?
It was tough, because obviously at this point I'm not a cyclist in the slightest. Yeah, I've had to work on that a lot. Lost a bit of weight in those 2 weeks, to be fair.
But you had lots of people coming to you, talking to you.
That was
aim
the
of
thing.
it. Okay, yeah, you're suffering while doing it, but you've got that interaction that's taking you off what you're doing, and
that's
the reason you are doing it.
Yeah, because everyone was sort of saying, why aren't you on the road? I'm like, why would you not go outside? It's so much nicer. And I was like, every minute or every mile I'm on the road is time that I'm not either communicating about the subject or raising money. Yeah. Like, I'm not riding around Douglas with like buckets, like getting people to chuck change in them. But if I spent a couple of days at Noah Bakehouse, the old one, spent a couple of days at the hospital, did a few days at Douglas Rugby Club. I went all over the place, and like every day you'd rock up somewhere and take like £500-600, and that would just give you that motivation for the next day, just to like keep going and keep going and keep going.
Where were you working at that stage?
at microgaming still.
No, still like.
Yeah, so that was obviously where I got set up when I moved home. And this is maybe, by this stage, it was maybe 10, 11 months after I'd come home. It was only 4 or 5 months after I got back and had been working that this whole fundraising stuff started.
So that all leads into going to the Ironman in Bolton.
Yep. So
brief for those non-Ironman and women listening. What's an Ironman?
A 2.4 mile open water swim, followed by a 112 mile bike, followed by a marathon.
Right.
Do you think doing your 2 challenges prior kind of gave you a like tester on? Actually, I quite like open water swimming, and I quite like the bike.
That's
and
it.
Run.
Yeah.
Perfect match.
Yeah, that's it. And it was more just wanting, kind of getting hooked on the concept of testing myself, like physically and mentally. Because physically, I say physically, it's all about the mind. That the mind's what allows you to test yourself physically, more so. That's what I'm sort of a big believer in anyway. And the more you push the boundaries, the more you become aware of what you can do physically. Your whole like sort of perspective and concept of what you are physically capable of doing just starts to shift, and that's what excites me going forward, is having those experiences now and then being able to push myself further and further each time, and that's what kind of gets you hooked, I think.
So do you know David probably not personally, David Goggins?
Yeah, stay hard. He's,
So again, our listeners, if you look YouTube David Goggins, and he's of the similar of you're way more capable of doing than you think you are, and it's about mastering the mind.
Yeah, that's it.
Which is again something we love to talk about on the pod. But yeah, certainly go and look Mr. Goggins up. It's
a fantastic book, to be fair. There's a lot missing.
Yeah.
That he doesn't tell, to do with his 3 wives and how his, motivation to get this pull-up world record probably destroyed a marriage and all the rest of it. But he's on a one-track road to being the best Goggins he can be. So fair play to the guy. Like, let him crack on.
Roger that.
Yeah.
As he would say.
Yeah.
So how was Bolton as an experience?
Awesome experience. Half the reason I'd stopped enjoying rugby was putting pressure on myself, having that expectation of performance each time. And Bolton, half the goal was to go and just enjoy it and not let pressure and expectation, because I'd created a profile for myself just to go, just by doing this fundraising and so many people being aware of what I was doing. And with that obviously comes a pressure, especially if I'd grown up being an international junior athlete. But that was sort of my main learning, was to not bother even taking into account what other people were thinking was happening, and just enjoying the day, taking it all in, and it was an absolute 10 out of 10 experience. I say I've nailed it in terms of not caring what everyone thinks, but as a race it was awful. Like, made so many mistakes, and that's what I'll take forward, but it didn't affect my enjoyment of the day, which was the main thing.
Right. So what year was that then? What year were we looking at there?
Last July, so only like 5 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 5-6 months ago.
I assume you were, I say the word beef as in not fat, but obviously being a rugby player, you're
chunky. We'll call it chunky.
Chunky.
See, that's the thing. It's all perspective, because all the rugby lads would look at me and be like, "Oh, George just lost so much weight. He's so skinny." And then I'm moving into this world of like cyclists and marathon runners. I'm like a giant. So it's I'm still kind of adjusting to that one.
Yeah. Well, in many ways, it makes the Ironman a lot harder, because you're carrying that quote unquote chunk around.
There you go.
It's not quite chunk, but okay.
Yeah.
So you come back from there. What happened?
I mean, I wasn't really sure, because the original plan was to take a year out from rugby and go back to it. But sort of halfway through this year, I was just like, could I see myself going back to playing rugby? The answer was just no, because I was enjoying what I was doing so much. Like, why change when I'm enjoying what I'm doing so much?
And then you start getting involved in I'll Listen.
Yeah, so I'll Listen. This came before Bolton. So essentially after that second fundraising challenge of doing those 84 miles, I started to pay an interest in school and basically early intervention and prevention work. Like, how can you equip people with the skills to manage the stuff that's going on in life without having such a spiraling low like I did? Like, that was just normal. They were very, very normal life events that everyone else was dealing with fine. But I'd ended up in this position where I'd hit absolute rock bottom. I'm kind of thinking in hindsight, like, how could I have been prepared to have handled that situation, to have not sunk to that point? The irony is that hitting that low point has changed my life and led to me sort of developing myself in a completely different way.
Again,
and
taking a positive out of the negative
situation. It's come to something hugely positive, but we'd still rather prepare kids to not end up in that situation, really. So, but yeah, so I was looking to get involved in schools and help in some capacity, and then this was sort of the time that Our Listen was sort of coming together, and the project lead, Annabelle, basically got in contact with me and said, look, like, if you're looking to be involved in schools, we'd love to have you involved.
So was that because you were putting stuff online, talking about it?
Pretty much.
Expressing a view in it?
Pretty much. Her, it was her boyfriend had showed her some of the stuff I was thinking about doing, and she basically just got in contact, and I was involved as a volunteer for a couple of months, and then eventually got onto a full-time role, and yeah.
You work them full-time now?
Yeah, been there full-time now. It's been 4 or 5 months, and like enjoying the job.
Rewarding?
So rewarding. It doesn't feel like a job.
And you're primarily in schools, is that?
Yeah, so my job is I'm a project coordinator, which essentially means I'll do everything. Just help with everything. Like, we run a podcast, we've got the website and blog and stuff we're trying to run. I'll be in schools doing assemblies and PSHE lessons.
How do you find the kids being receptive to that? Because again, from I guess all our experiences, when you're that age, you're kind of not as interested or that sort of thing. Like, how do you get them interested?
I mean, we've sort of come at a time where mental health's become quite a prevalent subject, which makes life a lot easier. It's more about how you present the information and how you engage them and how you talk to them is the way I've found it. Like, storytelling is how they engage with things. They're by people, not messages. So it's just how you sort of present yourself and how you speak to them is sort of the best way.
Do you talk about your story particularly or not? Or is it more just a generic?
So I went through a point where I was avoiding talking about myself as much, mainly because it's not my project. It's not George. This is something that's far bigger than me. It's got to be scalable beyond George talking about himself in an assembly. But then I sort of came to realise that there's this counter sort of catch-22 where if I can use that story and experience to help the kids, then do it, but just don't go overkill. And this was this whole thing of me sort of over managing my own ego, probably like being so worried about having this negative ego that I wasn't sort of making full use of the experience that I'd had, and I'm sort of working on that one to be honest.
I think when you're educating people, as ultimately you're doing, it's I think people listen more when you've been through, my own opinion, when someone stood in front of you saying, I've done this, I've been through this, and so I know what I'm talking about. I haven't read this in a manual or a book. I'm not saying they don't know what they're saying either, but people will certainly find it more relatable. Yeah. And how do you find talking in front of people? Obviously young. I think back, I can hardly do it now.
Yeah, I'm glad you've asked this question. We've not talked about this before, so I have an absolute fear of public speaking, like massive fear. Like, I can even say, so when I was at this low point at uni, having to go and do, it was a presentation in a group, and it's in front of like a lab of 20 people. There's no one there. You're not even being assessed. Like, it doesn't matter. I remember standing trying to speak in front of this class, and like my hands are shaking, my voice is quaking. Like, I'm literally like near enough incapable of doing it. And you guys will sit here having this conversation with me now and think like, how is that?
Yeah.
How is that possible? How you come across like that? And it just shows that I was a completely different person. And moving back to the island, trying to learn how to do presentations at work. This is at microgaming. Like, did an absolutely awful pitch about a game at microgaming that my good friend Stephen Crow will laugh if he listens to this, because I've fully ballsed up this pitch, just nerves, just not being able to present, and I've had to work on it so hard and put myself out my comfort zone in environments where you are vulnerable, because you're standing on a stage or you're standing in front of a group of 100, 200 kids. Like, it's pretty ruthless. Like, it has to be said. Yeah. There's no one there to back you up. It's just, it's you, and they're there to listen to you, to educate them on a subject, and that's scary. I've had to really, really work on it, but now it's sort of come good, and opportunities have come off the back of that. And the irony is, so I went to Cast Russian Sports Awards to do a little talk there for them, and I'm obviously like absolutely cacking my pants, going up to speak in front of all these parents and students, and just absolute imposter syndrome is in full flow. I'm thinking like, how do I have a right to be here, and all the rest of it. And I'm talking about saying yes to opportunities and getting out of your comfort zone, and how good things will come from that. And then off the back of that, a parent who was involved in my newspapers gets in contact with me after hearing that talk to do the newspaper feature for International Men's Day. And I think that's the one you read to then get in contact with me to come here. And it's just like funny how things go. Like you push yourself out your comfort zone, and then opportunities come, and it's just chasing that.
Yeah, I'm slightly jealous. I'm very jealous because it's only something I've learned in the last 6 months or a year that you have to basically. Oh well, you don't have to, but if you want to progress, develop. But my belief is you have to put yourself in those really uncomfortable zones.
That's it.
Maybe look like a goon, but that's just what you have to do.
And you learn when screwing it up, and even when you might absolutely nail one and think, oh flipping it, I've got this, I've absolutely got this now, I'm brilliant. And you go to the next one and you balls that one up, and you're like, right, back down to earth. Focus on your preparation, like don't get to lazy. Yeah, absolutely. But just that whole learning process was similar to the whole beauty of learning or getting involved in Ironman, because it was just starting from scratch. It's like a completely new skill set. Never even owned a bike other than probably a mountain bike at the age of 9. Had some of it, but not really, no real more experience, and never been a proper runner. So it was like just dropping the ego, learning everything from new, accepting that I'm going to have to fail to get to where I want to go, and just plugging away. And that was the same thing with obviously public speaking.
And how did you find the training on the Ironman? Because previously every sport you've done is team-based to what is essentially spending hours on your own.
Yeah.
How did you find that transition?
At first I enjoyed it because of my ability to do it on my own terms. So rather than needing to be at a session on a Tuesday and Thursday evenings and a full day committed Saturday and all the rest of it, I was able to go where I want to do what I wanted, which was great. But then after 6-7 months of just kind of doing my own thing, started to want to be around that team environment. So I'd start to get out with people on the bike, get involved in some running groups, start to swim with a few different people, and then my enjoyment levels sort of really shot up and really sort of started to commit to it a bit more.
These other people with aspirations of Ironman.
Yeah. So just in the last sort of, this is actually post Bolton really, but obviously trained a bit with Christian Varley, who's been massive help to me in terms of developing my own understanding of the sport on the whole. It's so easy to tap into the communities of runners and riders. I've not actually got out on too many of the on the big posse rides just yet.
But we'll drag you out. Yeah. So what's next?
The
The
future at the moment.
And
that's the thing. That's the thing. So it's all these. Well, the whole Ironman and fundraising thing sort of made me rediscover that kind of burning fire for something that I had for rugby. That's just kind of just reinvigorated that. But now it's like, right, how can we do this in a sustainable way that I'm not only going to enjoy the results, but I'm going to really enjoy the process. So it's making it so that it's not being so exhausted day to day from just being overly enthusiastic and overly passionate about what you're doing that you can't see yourself doing it in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's like that dawning reality that your career is a long time. And it's just like you're working so hard, and it's like, will I be able to do this for the next 30 years? Will I still be loving what I'm doing in 30 years time? And it's reining it enough so that I know I'll keep going, but reining enough so that I know I'll keep going, but also kind of satisfying my own passion for the subject, I guess. Which is part of my own learning process, learning not to do too much. And it's a bit of an odd one because all the personal development stuff always seems to be about doing the work and this grit and determination and putting in the hours. And for me, it's the absolute opposite. It's like reining in the hours so that you can actually do more in the long term, I guess.
Yeah. And have you got sporting ambitions then going forward? Ambitions and goals? Just
be the best I can be in as an Ironman athlete, and that's just me independently. So the goal is at first to go to Copenhagen next August, which is obviously quite a way off now, but to try and go sub 10 hours.
Okay.
And then from there,
Kona on the horizon, or
I mean, that's always the dream, isn't it? The answer to that question is, if I am the best Ironman athlete that I can be, I think I'll go to Kona.
Right. So Kona, for those that people don't know, you kind of qualify different Ironman events, and in essence it's the World Championships in Kona. A number of Manxies have been at different age categories. It's all age category related, it's the best of the best. So
if I get to the best level that I think I can get to, hopefully I'll go. But if I don't go, I can deal with that because I've been the best I can, and that's fine.
Great way to look at it.
So people want to reach out, chat to you, talk to you. I'm sure you've always got open doors, whether it's with your eye listener hat on or just George.
Yeah, always happy to chat. Generally, I'm pretty prevalent on Instagram. Do my best on Instagram. So
what's your handle?
It's
as the kids
my
say?
my own journey, but it's actually my one run journey because the eyes are one. Yeah, logistically it was a bit of a pain that, but yeah, we've had to roll with it.
We'll put some links in our notes as well for people that want to follow you and tag you.
Brilliant.
Okay, well, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. It's
No,
a really fascinating story. And just to remind everyone, he is only 22 years old, which is absolutely bonkers. So thanks for your time, George.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So, Matthew, that was very fascinating.
Yep.
Do you want to just remind our followers or our listeners where to follow and pick up?
So, wherever you're listening now, hopefully either SoundCloud, iTunes, or Spotify. If you can hit those like, subscribe, and please share for us. Facebook, we're under the N-Word Podcast. Twitter, our handle is Manx Sports Pod, and our Insta is the M-Word IOM. If you like what you're hearing, please reach out to us. If you've got a story as well, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And Insta is apparently Instagram, is that right?
Yeah, the cool kids call it.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, that's all for us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for letting us poke into your ears. It's word out from Martin.
And word out from Matt.